Hello and welcome to the LA Venture Podcast. This is Minnie Ingersoll, host of the podcast and partner at TenOneTen. TenOneTen is a seed stage venture fund here in LA. All opinions expressed on this show by me and my guests are solely our own. Alex Gurevich is the LA-based partner at Javelin Ventures, where he's focused on Series A investments. He's invested in some great companies like Masterclass, Thumbtack, Mythical Games, Hit Record, and Stencil, among others. He's from LA and lives in LA, but he was in the Bay Area for many years prior. Alex, thanks so much for joining the LA Venture Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah, fun to learn more about you and Javelin. And so maybe we start with that, which is tell us more about you and Javelin.
Yeah, sure. So Javelin, we've been around since 2009 at this point. We're on our fifth fund. We primarily focus on post-seed and early Series A, which to us just means check sizes between 500K to 6 million, really focusing on rounds of 4 to 6 million, where we lead those type of rounds. But the real tenet behind Javelin is a fund that was started by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Every partner at the firm has built a company or several companies in the past.
Did you start Javelin?
I joined in 2010. It was started in 2009 by my partners Noah and Jed. Noah Doyle's one of the partners. He was a co-founder of Keyhole, which was acquired by Google and became Google Earth. And then my partner Jed Katz was a co-founder of Move.com, which was a large exit. And then myself, as you mentioned, I grew up in LA. I moved up to Stanford for undergrad, and that's kind of where I got sort of exposed to Silicon Valley for the first time. I was lucky enough to do an awesome work study program there called the Mayfield Fellowship Program. And that, kind of sucked me into the Silicon Valley scene. And the first company I got involved with, I was pretty much the first employee. It was called UMA, which is a consumer electronics voice over IP company. Spent 3 to 4 years building that out. The company eventually went public. So had a big hand in, kind of building the foundation of that business.
Yeah. What did you learn from your time being what did you say, first or second employee there?
Yeah, I think, one of the big lessons there, that was a hardware company. So as I mentioned earlier, Javelin, we don't invest in hardware. So I think that was the main lesson.
Yeah.
Stay away from capital intensive businesses.
I feel like a lot of VCs don't invest in the thing that they used to be doing.
Yeah. I think when you learn the lessons the hard way, you know what it really entails, and you kind of want to stay away. So
what is it about the hardware that makes it so hard?
I think the biggest part, and I think it's changed a little bit over the years, it's become a lot more nimble and flexible. But back then, and I think to some extent still true, it's not unlike software, you can't iterate, your way to a great product. You sort of have to make that initial investment, hope it's the right one, and you don't have that many shots on goal. So if it doesn't, kind of hit the product market fit from day one, it's very expensive to keep iterating on it. So we do invest in some hardware at Javelin, but it has to be really kind of inexpensive, inexpensive hardware where there's a big software component to it, where it's not going to take $20-30 million to just see if this thing has product market fit. That's just not our profile. And that was kind of an issue that we saw at UMA was, we have to iterate our way through it, and we have to raise a lot of dilutive capital along the way. So that was a big lesson. But then one of our investors at UMA was Draper Fisher Jurvetson, now called Threshold Ventures. And I had a great relationship with them. And they were starting a venture fund in Eastern Europe. So I was actually born in the Ukraine. I speak Russian. I've always had a fascination with economic development in that part of the world. And this was in the 07, 08 timeframe. And so they asked me, do I want to build a venture fund from scratch in Eastern Europe? And I just thought that was just a crazy, experience that sort of tapped into one of my interests, which was international development, economic development, and technology and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I had forgotten that you set up DFJ in Russia.
Yeah.
So right now, do you invest internationally, or where does Javelin how much of your portfolio is Bay Area? How long have you been in LA?
Yeah. So, I grew up in LA, but moved to the Bay Area. I was there for 18 years, and I was always looking for a way to get back to SoCal. Javelin, we invest in in the U.S. primarily. I would say about 50% of our portfolio is in the Bay Area. I do have a very bullish kind of thesis on LA over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think I know you moved here as well. around the same time after a long stint in the Bay Area. I think we're a bit ahead of the curve there, actually, in terms of.
I agree. We are kind of thought leaders. I like that. What is it about LA that makes you so bullish?
Yeah, I think, in the past, there always had a lot of buzz and excitement, Snapchat, Silicon Beach, these kind of things. I never thought those were real moments. For me, the real moment for LA is when a lot of these larger tech companies, and I'm talking about like Apple, Netflix, Google, I'm sure Amazon, started setting up, large operations here, opening up big offices, investing in some of these SVOD, services that they're offering. To me, what that does, it not only brings tens of billions of dollars of investment in the LA ecosystem, but it creates massive amount of job opportunities for technologists. And these are people that are constantly going in and out of the startup ecosystem, right? So, in the Bay Area, it's like you go start a company at any point. If it doesn't work out, you could always go get a job at Google, right? So that whole ecosystem, I think, is longer lasting to me. It feels like a, decade plus type of a bet that's been made on LA, and that's one of the reasons I'm super bullish on what's going on here.
What about so the competitiveness of deals, and do you think LA seed companies or Series A companies are more likely to work with Series A investors who are here, or do you think they'll just keep going back up to Sand Hill Road like they've done?
Well, the seed ecosystem in LA is super robust. I think on the Series A front, I think there's still this bias towards Silicon Valley. One thing that I found interesting in my last year and a half is by saying that I am a partner or managing director at a Silicon Valley firm, but I happen to live in LA, has actually been the best of all worlds for a lot of LA entrepreneurs. They kind of love that. Like, oh, it's a Bay Area fund. You have Bay Area network. You have Bay Area partners, but you happen to be here, so I can see you face to face at any time and have that access without having to fly up there. That's great. That's ideal. So that's worked out well for us at Javelin, and I do wonder if that's going to happen more with other firms where they're still going to be based in Silicon Valley, but you're going to have a partner or a principal or someone based in LA, and more accessible to the LA entrepreneurs.
And I guess it's sort of even a broader question, which is, regardless of, even when you were back up in the Bay Area, how do you position yourselves, Javelin? Like, how do you win against a Sequoia, Benchmark, whoever else is also looking at deals? Or do you look at them sooner? Do you build a relationship? How does that work?
Yeah, if we're competing against those firms, we're not doing our job right. So
okay.
we're trying not to. Yeah, I mean, we're positioned at this, as I mentioned earlier, between seed and Series A. So we're ideally coming in earlier than a Sequoia or an NEA. So that means we're taking on more risk. And frankly, that's the stage that works the best for us. We get excited on that stage where there's still a lot of questions to be figured out on product and distribution strategy, business model. So we're comfortable with that risk. In fact, it's the one way that we sort of fool ourselves as former entrepreneurs that it's okay to be doing venture capital.
Right. Totally.
Is by doing it at that stage where it feels like you still have a hand in company in sort of the foundational work, but this is something that I've really taken to heart. It's sort of a Keiretsu type approach, and Keiretsu is a Japanese term for kind of a small intimate network of people that know you and know what you like. And know what
I thought it was like a complicated, odd business structure that was hard to unravel in Japanese businesses, but maybe it's more what you said.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought it meant. But anyway,
okay, great.
Yeah,
we'll roll with your definition.
Let's go with that one. So yeah, so just like a more sort of less quantity, more sort of quality and depth of connections. And these are, other entrepreneurs we've invested in with before, or other investors we've invested in with before, who, just again, really understand the kind of opportunities that we're attracted to, and vice versa. So we prefer that, approach versus, kind of a broader, let's create a lot of content. Let's, blog a bunch or tweet a bunch. We don't really do that. It's not authentic to our style, which means we're probably missing some of the hotter deals, but we shouldn't be honestly in those hot deal conversations anyways, because we're just not going to win against, a Sequoia or a Benchmark.
So like a Thumbtack or a Masterclass, which you mentioned, do you think that you saw something early in those companies that, I mean, other investors must have also looked? What do you think you saw that other people missed?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got really lucky on both, but so with Thumbtack, yeah, there's a sort of a famous story with that team where they went out and pitched everybody in the valley, and they got like 45 no's, and they talk about it all the time. We were the 46th fund, and we did say yes, but there was a caveat there. They were raising more money. Initially, they were raising like 10 million, and they adjusted and they raised. And they started raising a $5 million round, which is more in our sweet spot. So we were fortunate to see them at that point, but they didn't have a business model. They had a marketplace that was sort of working and some basic liquidity dynamics that were there. But
can you also just explain what they do? I think I sort of know them, but go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. They're a marketplace for consumers and service providers. So if you wanted to book a plumber or a roofer, a tutor, a clown for your kid's birthday party, that you would go on Thumbtack, kind of a new age Yellow Pages. They compete with Home Advisor, Angie's List. So now, it's a company that's been backed by Sequoia and Tiger Global and Google Capital, north of 100 million in revenue company with close to $2 billion of valuation. So pretty large scale. We saw them when they had zero revenue, and they had. They had a little bit of a marketplace working, but no business model, no revenue. What we saw was that they were extremely methodical in how they measured everything. They built their own internal dashboard. So we knew that they could test a lot of different hypotheses and get to the right answer eventually after thousands of little optimizations. The other thing that they had, which sort of fits our model of investing in capital efficient businesses with high leverage, is they were masters at SEO. So they could get to large scale without spending a lot of money on marketing. So that was extremely appealing to us as well. So we didn't hesitate and pulled the trigger pretty quickly.
And I think they have so much data, as you say, and I guess you saw that early, but I feel like I know them also because they publish interesting things sometimes that say there's too many clowns or there's too many plumbers. If California has too many yoga instructors, go be a yoga instructor in Wisconsin, you'll do much better or something.
Yeah, they do like a small business survey actually, where they have all this local data for how service providers are performing or working in those local areas, and so they create this really useful tool that is great for small business owners, but it's also great for just consumers in those local areas. The other side benefit of it is it's great for their SEO. So it actually helps build their linking strategy. I think it has they're very creative over there.
Were there any interesting things we can learn from that you saw them do when they were early stages, when they were iterating and optimizing things stories you remember you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're the company I think of most when I think of scrappiness at the start and kind of a scrappy spark. I think one of the best things that they did was how do you build supply and demand at the same time? And so in the early days they would go and essentially manufacture demand by creating these SEO pages and asking consumers, hey, who wants a plumber in San Francisco? And somebody would respond to the SEO ad saying, hey, I'm looking for a plumber. Then they would take that ad and they would, or that response, that lead, and go to a plumber and say, hey, here's some money for you. Do you want to sign up for Thumbtack, right? So I thought that was extremely clever. And in a marketplace, you have to figure out kind of that scrappy way to get the supply and demand flywheel going. And that team had it in spades. So I remember that vividly.
Do you have any view on review sites generally?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Thumbtack, reviews are important, but what they really excelled at is giving consumers choice and quality of match, right? That's what they've invested a lot of time and energy into the product and honing that part of it. So whenever you have a request for a job, you're going to get 3 or 4 quality responses from different pros, and you can decide which one you want, and you're more likely to have a positive experience and leave a good review if you were matched with the right type of pro. So the matching engine is really where they stand out, and they're their match rate is something crazy like 80, 90% in terms of successful matchmaking.
Yeah, very cool. How about Masterclass? Have you taken any Masterclasses?
Oh yeah. I've been lucky enough to go to a few recordings in the early days, so I got to see it live as it was happening, which was really, really a treat. But yeah, no, I've taken many master classes, including, I think the last one I took was the Aaron Franklin barbecue class. That was my goal for myself this summer, was to become a master barbecuer. So, so I did that. But yeah, the story of Masterclass in terms of how we got involved, was founded by David Rogier, who was my good friend and classmate from the GSB. And I remember when he always wanted to start a company, and when he started, kind of ideating through different concepts, Michael Deering, Harrison Metal gave him some money to do that. He came to me maybe like a year and a half into that process. We had lunch or dinner, and he told me the idea. He said, "Hey, I want to create this online learning platform that will allow people to take classes from the best minds in the world, the best, the geniuses in their categories." And my initial reaction was, "Well, that's nice. It's a nice idea. I'm sure lots of people have had that idea. How are you actually going to do this?" And he like slides a piece of paper over with like 10 names on it, and these are like amazing names, like James Patterson's on there, Serena Williams, and many others, Wayne Gretzky. And he's like, "See these names? They've already said yes to me. They're already in." And I'm like, "What? How did you do that? Like, you don't have a brand, you barely have any funding, you don't have any revenue, nobody knows who you are, and you got these amazing people to say yes to you." So to me, I mean, that was an unbelievable kind of testament to his ability to get this thing going. So for us, it was a bet on David. It was a bet on the market. It was obviously a huge market opportunity, and then it was a bet on a very capital efficient approach, because we felt like each instructor they would bring on would bring their audiences, would generate a lot of earned media and press, and so that would effectively lower the customer acquisition cost of each subsequent subscriber. So to us, it also fit sort of the business fundamental bucket. So we made the investment 9 months before they launched. It was a pre-revenue, pre-launch bet, October of 2014, and then they launched in May 2015, and it's gone pretty well since then.
Wow. I feel like now there's a lot of, there used to be Uber. Hey, I'm Uber for X, I'm Uber for Y. It seems like there's a lot of masterclass for education, masterclass for youth sports, or where do you think the world is going with the masterclass for X, or where do you think masterclass is going, I guess?
Yeah. No, I think we see ourselves as sort of a combo company between entertainment and education. We don't want to be all the way in the education bucket. We want it to be entertaining enough that you're taking these classes not because necessarily you want to become an expert in that field. Maybe some folks will take it for that reason, but maybe you just want to get inspired, or maybe you're just curious, more kind of like TED style of what is that, career or subject area all about.
So those are some great examples of what you invest in. I think at the start of the show, you said that you're a generalist. Do you think things have changed? I'm very interested. Like, are there things where you're like, oh yeah, I used to invest in something and then I learned that I'll never invest in that again? Or, has your thesis evolved some?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mentioned hardware was the big one for me,
yes.
Scenario. Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from. That said, you're always finding exceptions. Like, we have our sort of, Peloton horror story where because of that rule, we missed out on Peloton. So I think the one rule I think that we have is keep an open mind. One thing that we are not at Javelin, we're not sort of like ivory tower, pontificators that are thinking about here's where the future is going. We don't think that's our job. We think our job is to respond to entrepreneurs who are the real visionaries, who are the people who are setting the course for the future.
Yeah, so I was chatting with someone else who his point was that if you play out venture capital in 10 years or something, everyone's going to have a specific, we're going to be more thematic, or we're going to be more focused, and you're going to have to develop yourself as you are the go-to expert on marketplaces or whatever. And there won't be the generalist funds. You're not allowed to keep an open mind. In his vision of the future, you have to be more closed-minded, I guess.
I've heard that. I mean, I've heard a lot of that. And you hear that from LPs a lot too. And there's certainly merit to that strategy, but you have to go really, really deep. And I think it also depends on the stage that you invest in. So I think it's easier to have that if you're multi-stage or later stage. I think at our stage, you have to keep the peripheral vision open, because a great opportunity and an outlier can come from any direction. I don't know. I got some great advice at the GSB actually from one of my mentors, Peter Wendell. I don't know if you
I know the name.
but he was the founder of Sierra Ventures. He teaches a GSB entrepreneurship and VC course, and his advice was, don't take yourself too seriously as an investor.
Yeah, that's good.
Be ready to, there's a lot of power in self-deprecation, right? So I've always taken that to heart. And I think that goes along with the sort of idea that our job is to be a service provider to entrepreneurs and help them build those companies. So again, I just don't kind of believe in the you have to be a specialist in one particular area. I think it kind of happens over time anyways. Like you'll have certain companies that you invest in more often. So we've done a number of marketplace businesses. So yeah, for sure, we have more data points, more expertise in marketplaces. But I'm a little bit shy about waving the flag about being just a marketplace expert, because I think we have other stuff to bring to other companies.
Yeah. So I told you I definitely wanted to talk about you as a board member and working with your portfolio, because you have this amazing Medium post up about getting feedback from your founders. So I thought I'd ask you about you getting feedback, which is very unusual, but I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking about that. It's definitely a topic I'm very, very passionate about. It sort of arose from the fact that it always bothered me that feedback flowed one way in most board settings, usually from VC to the entrepreneur. It's sort of, the perceived job of the board member to give that constant feedback, and it's accepted. Everybody accepts it, and which is fine. That comes with the territory of being a fiduciary and investing money into an entrepreneur, into a venture. But I didn't understand why the feedback didn't also flow back to the board member, and especially in those early stages. I mean, I truly believe that you have as an early stage investor, as a seed Series A investor, you have a lot of impact on how that company is built and the foundation that's put in place. Why isn't there feedback flowing back to help you be better at your job? And I want to be the best board member I can possibly be. I want that feedback. I'm hungry for that feedback, and it wasn't coming to me, and for good reason, because of the board dynamics. An entrepreneur is not going to just give you unsolicited feedback, because who knows how you're going to react to it. So I actually think it's the job of the board member to proactively go out and ask for that feedback, and entrepreneurs will be more than happy to give you that feedback. I guarantee that. They're going to be excited by the ask itself. And that's what I found out. I did the survey, which I published as part of the Medium post, basic, 10 question, very basic survey of, strengths, weaknesses, and how I could tangibly be helping more, where I'm doing things that are bad for them and not helpful that I'll maybe not be aware of. I had such a positive reaction from all my entrepreneurs. Like, their minds were blown that I would even ask for feedback. And this is the first time anyone's asked for feedback as a board member. So really positive reaction. And then I learned a whole bunch about myself, things that I was doing that was good. And then things that I was completely oblivious to that maybe were not so good, and helped me course correct those points. And then I kind of tied it back to, a few experiences that I've had as a board member, where I've had companies that were in a privileged position to receive multiple term sheets and multiple offers, and roughly same economics and all that. So it comes down to references. And this particular company I'm thinking about asked for those references, and they got a lot of firsthand references from the VCs. Like, here are my references of the entrepreneurs that should tell you good things about me. We called those up, and we got negative after negative piece of feedback. Like, no, I would never work with this person again, or like, this person's done really, did something really bad. And I was blown away. I was like, these are the references that you thought were good, and they were actually negative. So you never asked. You never asked for feedback. If you had asked, you would have known that maybe you need to work on that relationship, or maybe you need to adjust something, and it would have helped you win that deal. So I started applying that to myself, thinking like, maybe I'm oblivious to something, and I was. So So I was really, I was really grateful. I'm really happy that I did that. And it's something I'm going to do on a continuous basis, once every, year or two, with all my entrepreneurs, just to kind of like get that, VC investor board member NPS score, right?
Yeah.
to see how I'm doing.
Yeah,
exactly. To see if I'm doing my job, and if it's, if I'm, truly helpful, or if there are areas where I could be better.
That's pretty ridiculous. Yeah. When you give out your names, when you give out your name of references, they come back. Yeah. Some people not self-aware. Yeah. Well, okay. So staying on that, without being personal, not like, so what exactly did people say you weren't doing well? Not asking that, but like, how have you evolved maybe and learned what makes a really useful board member or investor?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I got a lot of, positive feedback too, I like to think, but we'll highlight the negative. The negative, like one negative thing that I actually think all board members are guilty of this. You don't understand the impact of some of your asks and requests to entrepreneurs, right? You might like have like a random question that comes up, and like, oh, what was the product decision behind this, right? Why did you guys decide to do this? And it's just like a haphazard question that you asked the entrepreneur. You don't then think about the workflow that you set off at that company because of your request, that then ends up wasting a ton of time, because they're going to jump on it. Like they jump on it. The CEO will ask the product manager will ask the data people. They'll like do a bunch of stuff to get you this answer that wasn't really even that maybe important to you. I mean, if it's important, great, do it. But you just have to be more conscious of, some of those asks and some of those, requests, making sure that they truly are important versus just like a random, like, hey, I had a thought. So.
But I totally understand that from being on the other end of things, where I'm like, oh, like here's my draft email. I'm going to have 5 people read my draft email, whatever. But you're not leading a Series B. Like you've been the Series A investor. Do you actually have, like, the power dynamic is weird because it sort of doesn't exist, right? Like, why do they care what you think, sort of?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's part of the dynamic. You're still a board member, right?
Yeah. Is there anything else with Javelin and what you're doing now, like big things that we didn't cover, fundamental to who you are, Alex, that we should highlight on this podcast?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think probably one of the biggest things is sort of the type of companies, like the thematically the kind of companies that we love investing in, and entrepreneurs with that mission-driven approach is we love investing in companies where the product and technology ends up helping and working for people instead of against them. I think that's like a fundamental theme for us across the board. And I think if you look at some of the investments like Thumbtack or Masterclass or Hit Record, Carbon Health, they have that profile where those companies are building technology to help small business owners, to help educate people, to help bring digital health to the masses in an affordable way. To us, by definition, if you're working on products and companies that are again helping people and having technology improve their lives, it's by definition a mass market product. Not as excited about the whole automating jobs away kind of thing. We do look at those, but I think it's a higher bar for us to get excited about that. So my personal preference is to invest in the kind of companies that are more mass market and have this angle that they're really helping people.
Yeah, I remember you said once something like, I don't like investing in AI or something. It was a pretty strong statement considering every other investor I know loves to invest in AI.
I like investing in AI if it serves that goal, right? So if they're using, like Thumbtack is using AI to help in the matching algorithm to help small business owners. I love that. I don't like okay, we're going to have AI and it's going to eliminate, 50 jobs. Like that's the AI that I don't like as much, so. Okay.
So one more random personal question. I read maybe on your LinkedIn, are you avid sci-fi reader?
Yeah. Love sci-fi. Yeah.
What's some cool concepts, things that have made you see the world differently?
Oh man. I mean, I just remember as a kid, just the power of it, right? The power of sci-fi to help predict the future. I actually think sci-fi writers are amazing at envisioning the future. And not only that, it's sort of a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because a lot of our technologists and engineers and product people, they read those books as kids and as adults, and it actually helps them figure out what to build. They want to build what they read about. So I remember reading, like, the Orson Scott Card, Ender's Game series. And, I remember reading that, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. And to me, I'm looking at like life now, and other than the cosmic travel, like they were using iPads. They were, they were doing VR. I mean, it was just amazing to me how accurate it was. And of course you have, the new batch of, sci-fi writers like, Ramez Nam with Nexus, and the Three Body Problem, which I think is one of the best trilogies ever made.
Very cool. Alex, I will end there and say thank you so much for coming on this LA Venture podcast today.
Thank you, Minnie. This was great. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun to talk to you.